Jourdain Fisher.
Jourdain Fisher.
My nerves used to get like so bad, entice an audience, hook an audience. Every good comedian is going to bomb. The best comedians bomb. You have to. And that's where you start building from. Damn, my cutting board pretty as fuck.
Have we officially made it?
Hell yeah. If I didn't have comedy, I really don't think I'd be who I am right now.
How tough is that?
You really have to dig through a lot of crap to get a diamond. Dave Chappelle, the business is in our hands now. Here's a joke. Here's a joke. Here's a joke. This sucks. These jokes are rough. Well, I guess I'm living with my parents for a year.
Oh my God, I'm getting ready to throw up.
I was trying, bro. I was trying. Say your Tonight Show set. Kind of, you're just failing. Just going up there and failing so much. Fame really isn't popularity anymore. It's more familiarity. They showed us they could take it away just like that. Give this shit away from us.
What is one piece of advice that you would give them?
Ideas lose steam. Do it. Whatever it is, do it. But then I'll reframe my mind and say,
welcome back to Differentiated, where we have conversations with people who are building incredible things and the stories behind them. Today's episode is all about comedy, creativity, and finding humor in some of the most unexpected places. Our guest is the hilarious and ridiculously talented Jourdain Fisher. You've probably seen him on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, not once, but twice, Comedy Central, and the mastermind behind some of your favorite TV jokes. But what you don't see behind the jokes is the hustle, the late nights, the writing room debates, the TikTok strategies, and the wild, funny, and sometimes unbelievable experiences along the way. Today, we're going to be covering it all. His journey from North Carolina to national stages, how he's turned his comedy into a business, and a mini masterclass on building a social following that actually grows with you. If you're a creative, you're building a business, or you're just chasing a dream, you're going to love this one. Now for our interview with Jourdain Fisher. Jourdain Fisher, welcome to the show.
hey, thanks for having me, buddy.
Man, I'm excited for this. I think this is going to be really interesting for anybody that is trying to turn their passion into a business. And so I want to start with this. You've been on Fallon, not once, but twice.
Yeah.
Comedy Central specials, Gangsta Chef, all legendary. I want to ask you, have we officially made it?
I'll say no. I feel like making it, there's a vision of making it in my mind, but I think we're on our way.
And we're going to dig into a lot of that. But before we get there, you grew up in North Carolina, which outside of somebody like Zach Galifianakis or Ken Jeong, not necessarily the hot spot for comedy. Was comedy always part of the plan, or was this something that you grew into?
Kind of fell into, I guess. I mean, I watched it a lot as a kid. I started watching stand-up when I was like 9 years old with like Eddie Murphy and Richie Pryor. And then, I just rode the bus to school every day, and I was just funny on the bus. And eventually the kids were like, you should do stand-up. And I am more of a shy, reserved person. So I never really saw myself performing on stage the way I do now, especially. So, I just started writing down some funny things in a notebook, thinking like, okay, maybe I'll write like a funny book or whatever. And it just wasn't coming out the way I expected. So, yeah, I just tried stand up and just kind of stuck with it. I got on stage at the Greensboro Comedy Zone when I was 17. And it went all right. Had some friends from high school there, teachers and parents and stuff. And now here we are 17 years later.
Okay. You're 17 years old. You're in the Greensboro Comedy Club for the first time ever.
Mm-hmm.
You look out, you take the stage, all of your friends and family are there. People that I have to imagine you really want to impress at the time, since it is your first time ever doing this. Take me through the emotions. Was it like, this is what I'm absolutely made to do? Or was it like, oh my God, I'm getting ready to throw up. Get me out of here.
It was nerve-wracking. It was scary. Because I had some jokes in mind or whatever, but like leading up to it, I went second. We got there and I told the guy that was hosting the show, I was like, just don't put me first. It's my first time. So they put me second. And my nerves used to get like so bad to me before going on stage, especially that first time, that I would go into pretty much like a low power mode. And I just kind of just have my eyes closed. And it's like I was almost like taking a nap right there in the chair. And they called me up and it's just like my body just rose. It was kind of like an out of body experience. I wasn't in control of my limbs or anything. I just walked on stage and told my jokes. Nothing groundbreaking at all. 17-year-old material talking about, waking up with, morning wood and school food and nothing important. And it went well enough that people laughed, and afterwards people were like, "Oh, you were funny. You should do this. You should try," and everything. So I was like, "All right, here we are." And I got bit by the bug.
Positive reinforcement is always needed and welcome when you're just starting something new. And so I'm curious, what was harder for you getting started? Was it writing the material? Was it getting gigs? Or was it convincing your family that you weren't completely crazy?
Oh, I mean, honestly, yeah, that convincing my family that I wasn't crazy was a big part of because like I said, I wasn't at home like goofing off. I wasn't like making my parents laugh all the time. So the first time that I went to my mom and told her that I wanted to do stand-up comedy, it completely caught her off guard. She had no idea where this was coming from. And they sat me down and had like a stern talking to me like I was on drugs or something. Um, but they still were very supportive after seeing me get on stage. And my mom like used to drive me to all my shows. So really early on, it was just a matter of getting on stage, like, and just coming up with material. I wanted to come up with a new 5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes every week. So I didn't really understand that comedy is a game of repetition, that you kind of have to do the same material over and over and over again and hone it. So I just thought like, yeah, I'm supposed to come up with a new 5 minutes every week, especially because my friends were coming out every week. Where I started, you had to bring 5 people to the shows every week. So I wasn't trying to have my friends come out and see me tell the same 3 jokes every Thursday. So yeah, I mean, those early days, and I was 17, so it was like the early days was really just a matter of getting on stage. That was the toughest part more than anything, is just like pushing myself to come up with material every week and then getting on stage.
From following along with you, it seems like storytelling is a big part of what you do. Did that always come natural to you, or did you learn that over time?
No, that didn't come naturally. That came over time, really. It's just really just getting on stage over and over and watching people. Like I consume a lot of comedy now, and especially back when I was growing up. So just watching people and picking up on certain elements of how a story is told, and twists and turns and everything like that. And just getting on stage and trying to tell a story and failing, and then going up there and trying it again a different way. And even to this day, it's still something that I work on consistently, is getting on stage, listen back to the recording of the set and the material, and then figuring out a way to approach it differently, or how to deliver my material in a way that's the best way to entice an audience, hook an audience, and keep them engaged, and then add those certain twists.
Now, I have to imagine there's a lot of people that are listening to this that at some point, either in their past, what they currently do today, or in the future, are going to have to get up and give a presentation or a speech to somebody somewhere and have a paralyzing fear of public speaking. And the first thing that I do when I sit down and write my own presentations or my own speeches is I think about the audience. What do they want? What do they need? What do they desire? And what are some of the limiting beliefs that are holding them back from achieving that? Now, I know for you, that's not directly applicable because you're telling jokes and you're optimizing for laughs. But when you can start to feel an audience losing their engagement, or you feel a joke going sideways, do you adjust on the fly, or how do you adapt to that?
Yeah, there are times where you definitely course correct, but sometimes if I'm trying out new material and it's like these are new jokes that I want to try, you just got to sit on it. I mean, there have been plenty of times. Every good comedian is going to bomb. The best comedians bomb. You have to go up there and take risk, and say things that are outside your comfort zone, outside of probably the audience's comfort zone, and see how it goes, and then adjust accordingly. Like when I'm first trying out jokes and they're bombing, you really have to stick with it and just be like, man, all right, well, this sucks. These jokes are rough, but you have to keep going and see if anything that you wrote is worth anything. Because even though like 6 minutes of it might be bad, there might be 30 seconds to a minute of it that's solid and has potential. And that's where you start building from. You really have to dig through a lot of crap to get a diamond.
That's so true. Now, you have a hobby, you have a passion that if you stick with it long enough is going to build some sort of momentum. And for you, that meant, hey, I need to make a decision on, is this something that I'm going to continue just doing on the side, or is this something that I really want to turn into a career? And you
Mhm.
had to make a decision. Do I leave North Carolina and go to a bigger city to help build that brand? And for you, it was either go to LA, go to New York City. Walk me through the decision of what ultimately led you to New York.
So I was leaning towards Los Angeles because really the weather. I mean, there's snow on the ground right now in New York outside, and I just wanted to avoid the brutal New York winters. But one of the biggest influences on my comedy style and just me being interested in comedy in general is Dave Chappelle. So I think it was 2000, oh man, 2012 or 13. Dave Chappelle comes to North Carolina to perform in Winston-Salem, which at that time, Dave wasn't really touring like that. And this is at a time where he had gone to Africa and, had disappeared from the comedy scene. So anytime Dave Chappelle showed up, it was a big deal for just comedy, the comedy scene in general. So I saw he was performing in Winston-Salem and I was like, he's really coming here? So we went to the show. It was great. It was fun. Go to the bar afterwards. That's across the street. I'm hanging out with my friends and the other comedians. And lo and behold, Dave Chappelle comes walking right into the bar. And I'm starstruck because this is one of my idols right here in the flesh in a public setting that isn't the theater that we just saw him in. And he's hanging out outside, smoking, chilling. People are around him. They're being very respectful, just having a simple conversation with him. So I'm standing there just kind of eavesdropping. And one of my buddies pushes me forward and he's like, "Hey, Dave, this is my friend Jourdain. Uh, he's a big fan." And I was like, "Hey, man, like I'm a comedian. I've been doing this about 6 years." And, he lit up. He's like, "Oh, you're a comedian?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Man, I'm trying to decide where to move. I don't know if I want to go to Los Angeles or New York. What do you think?" And he was like, "Man, I would go to New York." He was like, "That's where I did comedy. That's where I came up and cut my teeth. It's a great town. It's a great city. A lot of opportunity to get on stage. You'll get really good as a comedian. It's how you get strong as a comedian." And that pretty much sealed the deal. It really took me down a different path in my comedy career because I really was thinking like, okay, I'll go to LA and do all the things I want to out there. But it made so much more sense when he put it that way that I could go to New York, become strong as a comedian, and really, I guess, get my name out there and get my skill set up, and then go to LA with that toolbox from being in New York.
And how long was it from the time that he made the recommendation to you to when you actually packed your bags and moved up north?
I think it took about another 2 years. I wanted to move when I was 24, but then I broke my leg at a trampoline park like an idiot. And so that set me back about a year. And then I moved when I was 25.
At least tell me you were doing something cool when you broke it.
I was trying, bro. I was trying. I was jumping up to do like a front flip into the foam pit. And when I jumped up, my leg just snapped. It was like a Kevin Ware situation. The whole thing was sticking out. And I was just like, okay, well, I guess I'm living with my parents for a year.
Oh, no. Oh, man. Okay, so you break your leg at a trampoline park and it suspends you going up to New York. Takes a little bit longer than you expected, but you finally pack your bags, you get up there. How long from the time that you get settled to when you make your first appearance on Fallon?
Let's see. I think that took about maybe 3 years, I think. Yeah, because I moved in 2015. And I mean, getting to New York was tough. I was alone in as city as a city can be. And, it's just like starting over. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew the accomplishments I had in North Carolina. Nobody cared. Like, you got to start with new jokes almost because some of the jokes that you told back in North Carolina don't work in New York and they're not as good as you once thought they were. So, yeah, I was just plugging away at open mics again and then getting into the comedy clubs and everything. And then I did this thing called Just for Laughs, which is kind of like it's almost like the NBA draft for comedians. They have a thing called New Faces and they take a class of comics up there every year to Montreal. And I had a good set there. And the booker from The Tonight Show heard I had a good set there and had me come and do a Tonight Show showcase. So that went well. And then they booked me for I think it was November 2018. Yeah. And then two months later after that or so, I got hired to work there. So it was kind of a crazy whirlwind in that time span.
So we're going to dive into you actually working there and writing for the show here in just a second. But before we do, what is it like preparing for something that big?
So that really was the biggest thing I had ever done in my life until that point. So it's really 10 years of preparation over time. It's just all that bombing, all the traveling on the road, doing shows for people in the middle of nowhere and telling those same jokes over and over again. And then, just like getting it down to where it's like, what's a set? What are 5 minutes that showcase me and my ability as a comedian and who I am, really? Um, so for the Tonight Show, when you get booked there, the booker sets you up with a week of shows within New York City at various stages. So you just run it over and over and over again. You run that 5 minutes until you're sick of it. Like you can just recite it in your sleep. You're blue in the face to the point where if like somebody woke you up out of a dead sleep and said, say your Tonight Show set, and you just like Manchurian candidate right into it. So I was just doing that. I was just running it constantly. And the day of was the most nerve-wracking thing. Like it felt kind of like the same way I felt when I got on stage for the very first time. Um, that's the most nervous I've ever been in my life, were the moments leading up to that Tonight Show set, that entire day. Just riding in the car, like again, low power mode, napping, just wanting to be in my own space, not be touched, not be talked to. Um, and just kind of getting your head straight. But it went great. Like once I was out on the stage and you get the first joke out, it was smooth sailing.
Does that feeling subside over time? Does it ever really go away?
Yeah, it's subsided over time just because I've done it so much now. There are moments where I get a little nervous. I think sometimes if I'm trying new material, I'll get a little nervous, but in a good way, like in an excited way. And typically when I'm trying new material, I'm nervous like that. Like it definitely comes out not as confidently as I would like it. But that's just kind of my work process. I have to hear it suck first. And then once I get it out of my system and hear it go kind of then I go, all right, that's done. The worst part's over. We heard ourselves say it. So then I can go back and readjust and say it the way I'd like to. But yeah, luckily I'm not just a nervous wreck before I go on stage every time. I used to not be able to eat or anything like that, but now I'm just like eating a cheeseburger and fries or whatever. I'm like, oh, it's my turn. All right, let's go.
We could all use a good cheeseburger sometimes, that's for sure. But what do you say to somebody that has a big keynote coming up, or they have a huge presentation in front of hundreds or thousands of people, or maybe they're selling from stage? What's your biggest piece of advice for them?
Preparation, honestly. Really just go over your set, for lack of a better word. Go over the things that you're about to talk about. You know, write it out, literally, with a pen and paper, not just typing it. You can type it, but also transcribe it with written word, because that gets it in your memory better for whatever reason. And then just kind of practice it. Say it in your room. Say it alone. Hear your voice. Hear your voice. I think sometimes, maybe this is personal to me, but sometimes I think we're afraid to hear ourselves say these things, like before we actually go do it. We keep it inside, and then next thing you know, the first time you're ever saying it is on stage, and it's just like, oh fuck, how's this gonna go? So yeah, it's really just a preparation game, and then just realize like this is just a short moment in your life. Whether that speech is 5 minutes or 30 minutes, there's only 5 to 30 minutes out of your very hopefully long life that, at the end of the day, it's going to be fine. It's not going to be, something that makes or breaks you. So
could not be more true. And so you're performing on Fallon, then they ask you to come on full time. Mm-hmm. What do they have you do?
Do monologue. So when Jimmy comes out and tells jokes at the top of the show and, goes over the today's news stories and all that kind of stuff, that's what I was doing. I was part of that team that writes those monologue jokes, which is it's a tough job. It was fun. It's something I never thought I'd be doing. I got to be part of an American institution. And whether you like the Tonight Show or not, like, it's just, I don't know. I never imagined that's what that would lead to, is me writing jokes for the Tonight Show. I mean, I watched that show. I watched Jimmy Fallon's first episode when he was Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. I watched the first episode when it was the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Watching him do thank you notes and all that kind of stuff, which I have pinned to my wall right here in front of me, like a couple of the thank you notes that I got onto the show. Yeah, so it was just every day just coming in. It was like a 9 to 5 job, and you're just a little worker bee coming up with jokes, reading stories about the news, and just like figuring out what kind of one-liners you can give to Jimmy Fallon to say that night.
I think that's so interesting because, especially in the LinkedIn community, there's been a huge uprising in the popularity of ghostwriters, especially for corporate executives. You have a CEO that wants to build their brand, just doesn't have the time. And so they hire somebody to come in to write all of their LinkedIn posts, turn them into a thought leader, and get their brand out into the world. How hard is it to write for somebody else, to learn their personality, their quirks, what's going to land for them? How tough is that?
It can be tough because you have to find their voice, because we all have our unique individual voice. We all have our sense of taste, our sense of humor. So you have to take that and adjust it, because there's still going to be part of you that's in it naturally because you are writing it. But you have to, fill that vessel as them. You really have to envision how would they say it. And it can be tough. I think if you watch somebody enough and get to know somebody enough, you start to pick up on the types of things they would say and how they would phrase it. So really, it's just a matter of researching them and getting a hold of how they present their ideas.
How many jokes does it take for one to land or for them to put it on the show?
Oh, we write like between, all the writers, there's, hundreds of jokes written a day. It may be 50 to 100 per person that day, depending on how strong your coffee was that morning. And you just see what sticks. Because at the end of the day, there's only going to be maybe on a long monologue up to 20 jokes that are put on the top of the show. It usually ranges from like 10 to 15-ish. So, think about that. It's like you're writing between all of us like 400 jokes or whatever just to get it down to 15. It's baseball. Seinfeld put it like that. It's baseball. Comedy is baseball. Whereas you can go up there out of 10 at bats, strike out 7 times and get 3 hits, and you're a Hall of Famer. So that's what it is all the time with comedy. You're just failing, just going up there and failing so much to get 3 hits and be like, all right, I did that.
And the 3 hits, that is what it is all about, baby. And I think about somebody that is trying to build their business or build their brand, and they are trying to figure out, where do I start? It's just about getting the ideas out. You're going to have a lot of really, really bad ideas at the beginning, and that is okay. It's all about getting them down, getting through the bad ones so that you can actually find something that is worth sharing with the world.
Yeah, don't be afraid of that journal. No matter what business you're in, it's like you got to write those ideas down and get it out. Like that started to help me, like doing the whole journaling thing in the morning, just seeing what comes out. And then out of nowhere, you're like, oh, this is something. And you just start diving into that.
Now, I think about comedy as a whole. I think about your rise to stardom, but I also think about comedy being an extremely vulnerable art form. You're talking about things that are extremely personal, things that may be trending in the news. You might be talking about gender, sex, race. You may also be challenging people's beliefs and pushing the edge of what they may be comfortable with. What has comedy taught you about yourself throughout the years?
That's an interesting question. Just because, like I said before, like I grew up being a little more shy and reserved. I think comedy's allowed me to express myself and I guess dive into certain aspects of where I am emotionally and growing up, and how I feel about certain things in the world, and gain a confidence in those ideas, and then just a sense of confidence in myself in general. Um, I'm not the same. I don't think I'd be the same person that I like if I didn't have comedy. I really don't think I'd be who I am right now, as far as like how I carry myself and just like the confidence it's given me. Um, so yeah, I mean, I do think there was a time that I really kind of avoided exposing how I felt about myself within my jokes on stage. And it's only more recently that I've started to really like explore those ideas and talk about myself in a way, and like talk about the things that I guess like I've had to work through, or just like whether it's, dating or just like personal growth in general. Um, because, like I said, I used to talk more about the world, and the world, has gotten a little crazy. And I think sometimes now audiences, I think a lot of people have their sides they've chosen. You know, not saying what's right, what's wrong, or whatever. But I think sometimes when you bring those things on stage now, sometimes people are burnt out on hearing about it. And then some people are also defensive about where you're going to go with it. So that's not to say that I don't talk about those things at all anymore. But I think it's allowed me to start writing more about myself, because people can only have an opinion about me with that. And it's not going to hurt them to, laugh at me just because it's about me, really. Um, and I think that's been good. I think that's been good for my comedy to just be like, all right, let's actually let people get to know who I am, you know? And that's really when people start to resonate with you down the line, because they start saying, oh, you're like that. I'm kind of like that too. Like I've experienced these kind of things. And it allows like fans to connect with you more and grow with you more, because they get invested in you as the product.
I love that. And so let's shift gears just a little bit, because a hobby is only a hobby and a passion is only a passion until that first bill shows up on your doorstep. I want to talk about the business side of comedy. Was that always a part of your plan, or is that something that evolved over time?
No, I knew when like I started doing this for real, like even in the open mic stages, that I wanted to make money doing it. Um, I mean, I used to have to pay to get on stage. Like that's how it worked. I had to pay $5 to get up on there. Which, if you're an up and coming comedian listening to this, don't do that. you know, you shouldn't have to do that. Um, but yeah, I've always wanted to make money with this, and like the business side of comedy has changed a lot. We used to have more gatekeepers in the business. There was kind of like just there was kind of a simple avenue. I don't know if simple is the right word, but it was more laid out in the fact that you'd go do New Faces in Just for Laughs in Montreal, like I mentioned before, that little NBA draft type deal. You'd get on a late night appearance like a Fallon or Conan, Letterman. Then you do like a half hour on Comedy Central, or, do those types of appearances. And then hopefully that'll lead to some road work, potentially some acting work or a writing job, what have you. And then, you're kind of in the system. It's like, all right, now Comedy Central wants you to do an hour, or, you try to get your hour on HBO and all that kind of stuff. And people would see those things and come out from those things alone. A lot of that is gone. Comedy Central is kind of a dead platform now. I mean, they just show reruns and the Daily Show. Late night really doesn't do the same thing it once did. I mean, there was a time where late night, if you went on late night and Johnny Carson liked you and gave you an okay symbol or told you to come sit on the couch, your career skyrocketed and you were now a household name and you were a touring, successful, selling out comedian. Now it's a lot more groundwork for the comedian themselves. The business is in our hands now, which is it has its benefits, but it also has its downsides, because it puts a lot more onus on the comedian to get our name out there through avenues like social media. So now, instead of getting on television and doing a 30-minute set or having like one special or whatever that gets people out to see your shows, now you have to post clips constantly, almost every day, really, where it's like, here's a joke, here's a joke, here's a joke. Like you just keep seeing it. Here's this podcast that I'm on. Here's this other appearance. Here's this sketch that I did. And you have to upload it to Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and grow all these platforms, which is tough. It's hard to get 100,000 followers on one platform, more or less five of them, and then try to draw those people out to come see you in person and buy tickets. To transform those views and those follows into ticket sales is extremely difficult, which I'm still in the process of doing. Like, even with the following that I do have, it doesn't necessarily mean people just automatically buy tickets for you just to come out and see you. So the business side of it is very complicated when it comes to live performance and getting people out there, because a lot of comedians are just really on their own. There's not like you get signed to a label like a music artist where they're going to push you and put you on all these things and get your song on the radio and, all that, where people are just hearing you all the time. Like, for people to be successful at comedy, you have to have people that really like comedy, because comedy is kind of a niche thing. So you have to really like go look for stand-up comedy in order to be a fan of it. It's not like music where it's just you walk into a department store and you just hear that song. You're like, oh, I like that song, and it's just kind of gets embedded in your brain.
Okay, so back on the business side of things, you correct me if I'm wrong here with this assumption, but I'm sure at some point you have to debate with yourself the topic of selling out, doing something for the money versus doing something that you truly believe in. How do you balance the two?
Listen, man, I think every comic has a price. I honestly do. I mean, that's why you see comics like hosting Is It Cake or whatever, like that wasn't their dream, but Netflix comes to you and says, hey, we're going to give you $200,000 to host this show or whatever the amount of money is. You're like, okay, because we all have bills. We all have bills. And if you have something that gives you stability in the entertainment business, you kind of take it, like, yeah, whether it's a writing job, hosting job, or whatever. There's plenty of times where like a lot of comics are looking for it out. Make no mistake, because the touring side of things and selling tickets and this constant self-promotion, that's a tough avenue. It takes a lot of work, and we're all just trying to make money. The whole reason we're self-promoting all the time is because you'd like to sell out those shows and make a decent amount of money. But if somebody is like, hey, you can be on this show and it offers you stability, hell yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it. Some people don't want to do it. Sometimes you do think it depends on the opportunity for sure. But I'm not gonna sit there and act like I don't understand why people take certain jobs.
You talk about self-promotion, and with that, social media becomes a big part of what you do. You built an incredible following on TikTok and Instagram. When did you first realize that social media was going to be a non-negotiable, and what's the first few steps that you took to getting started?
I think I learned kind of at the same time everybody else was learning, really, because platforms like Instagram and all that, we all know we were just on there taking pictures and having fun, and then it slowly became this thing of like people putting up clips and people starting to like really get the whole influencer culture thing and all that. And you'd see comedians starting to do it and like sell tickets from posting clips. So, yeah, I think it was kind of like post-pandemic probably that I started posting things kind of more regularly and started seeing followers come along and people, I guess, really reacting to the things that I posted. So yeah, now it's a huge part of it where it's like, it's work, it's its own work. And there are times, especially as a self-employed person, where I get exhausted by it. and I don't want to do it. I don't want to deal with it. And I don't want to have to, because I do all this stuff myself, man. It's like I'm editing these clips. I'm, going through and putting all the captions. I'm scrubbing through all my material and having to upload all this stuff myself. So I'd love to get to a point where I can pay somebody to do that kind of stuff for me and be like, hey, you're the social media manager. You upload all this so I don't have to be stuck to this freaking app and have to look at this stuff all day. But Yeah, I mean that stuff is very important, and yeah, I think it was like post pandemic. That's when I realized like, oh, people are like jumping on board, and it's a constant climb. It really is. Where it's a thing where even I can't I can't believe the amount of followers that I do have, and it almost doesn't compute in my mind. I think because there are so many people with followers now. Like we're in a time where fame has become different. It's a different measuring stick. Fame really isn't popularity anymore. It's more familiarity. So, the fact that I have the amount of followers that I have on like an Instagram or a TikTok, it almost doesn't like it might as well be 1,000 people on there to me mentally. But that's good, I think. I think you'd rather have that where it doesn't seem like this big number is changing who you are personally, because I don't want to be that person that's going up saying, I got this man, like, who gives a shit? Like, who cares? That could go, like, they showed us they could take it away just like that, you know?
Yeah. What was your reaction? Because you have over 400,000 followers on TikTok.
I was almost relieved. I was almost like, give this shit away from us. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was just like, I don't know. The thing is, like, listen, you and I are of that generation. We've seen MySpace come and go. We've seen Vine come and go. We've seen the popularity of these different apps come and go. So, in all honesty, it was another thing where I was like, all right, well, there's another one, and then something else will come along that we'll try to build up, so it's just you take all these things a stride, man. Like I will say, like, my focus right now, like, I'm still continuing to try to build up the Instagram. I'd really like to build up my YouTube. I think with my um career specifically, I think YouTube shows the best benefit down the line, because I think people on YouTube are clicking on you on purpose versus being fed the algorithm like scroll with a TikTok or an Instagram where you just happen to pop into their feed. But YouTube, you subscribe to that person, you see their thing, and you click on them because you want to watch it. And the time that's on a YouTube video, you're investing that time. You're like, oh, I'm going to spend 10 minutes watching this. So mentally, if we're choosing a platform that I think for me is going to benefit growing, I think that's the one that I want to focus on. It's YouTube.
Where are you in that YouTube journey?
I'm at like 8,500. So it's still very early, but I mean, a month ago or so, I was only at like 1,500. So, it's just a matter of posting more. Is just like anything else. I want to get to 10,000 hopefully by February or the end of February, and then hopefully, grow it from there. I want to get it tenfold there and start selling out.
That brings me to my next question. What is the difference between a great stand-up set and an absolutely killer viral social clip?
Oh, damn. I mean, who's to say? Because a killer viral social clip could be anything. It literally could be anything. It could be a dance. It could be somebody falling. It could be just like a prank or whatever. But a great stand-up set is crafted. I mean, somebody wrote that. And also it's more than just like killing. A great stand-up set is more than killing. It's more than just getting the room to laugh. It's saying something that is unique. Like anybody can go up there and do like typical sex jokes or, bodily functions, that kind of stuff. But to go up there with a unique perspective and have people go, whoa, I never thought of it that way, or just like something that's unique to you specifically and is crushing and people are like applauding through it and everything. That's so is so different. It's work. A unique viral clip. Now, there are funny or well-crafted viral clips where it's like somebody wrote this and put in the time and, is whatever. But stand-up is just its own monster, man. Like it takes time. I think the time invested is really the main difference because you're watching that person kill that it didn't come out like that. That's not the first time that they've had to get it to that point. Like that took, anywhere from a week to a couple months for it to be as good as it is where you're seeing it crush.
Something that I've really enjoyed of yours lately is Gangsta Chef. How did that idea come about?
That came out of boredom in the pandemic. I was back home in North Carolina during the pandemic, and I was going to make some guacamole. And I decided to record myself making guacamole and just started doing the voice like, damn, my cutting board pretty as fuck. And just like start doing like this stupid voice. And people were like, oh, this is funny. They started like kind of quoting back some of the things in the video. And my face wasn't in it, even in it at that time. So yeah, I did maybe like a couple more during the pandemic. And then recently I was like, you know what? Like, let me do this for real. Like, matter of fact, I need to call my camera guy and be like, hey, let's do some more next week. But yeah, I think it was just a fun, silly little character that's very much unlike myself. I'm not a gangster. I've never really grown up in that environment or anything. You know, the high school we went to. And I was like, all right, let's just do this because it's fun. And people seem to respond to it. And they always like quote back some of the little ingredients names and all that kind of stuff. So it's fun. And I like to cook. So it works out.
How was the guacamole?
It was good. Everything that I made has been good. Everything's been pretty solid. Like in all the videos, if you go watch the Gangsta Chef videos, they're solid recipes and they turn out well.
Send me the recipe. I need one. I love it. Now, for somebody that wants to build their brand, they want to get their name out there, they want to build their IP, and they want to start on something like TikTok or Instagram, what is one piece of advice that you would give them?
Consistency is really that. It really just comes down to being consistent. I think a lot of people have the fire at the beginning, but it is tough to keep the fire throughout. You know, I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it, where you have a great idea and you're like, oh man, this would be dope. I'm excited about it. I want to do this. And really, you have to get out the starting blocks and do the idea because ideas lose steam. So do it. Whatever it is that you have in mind, do it. Start it. Go do it. It does not have to be perfect. Progress makes progress. Okay. Do not worry about perfection. So just go do the thing and then consistently do it. Because if you keep showing up, people keep showing up for you. Because really, it's the whole squeaky wheel gets the grease type deal. Like, think about your favorite podcast or whatever right now. A lot of us probably see discover podcasts from clips at this point. The only reason that you decided to start listening to it effectively and consistently is because you kept seeing those clips come across and you liked them. And then eventually you're like, well, let me listen to this thing. Let me watch this whole thing and see what these people are really talking about on here. And then you were a fan. But those guys or women or whoever that are on that podcast, that wasn't that first clip. That clip you saw wasn't their first clip. That was their 100th clip. That was their 200th clip. And it took that many for you to become a fan. So anything with that, it's the same thing applies. Just be consistent. Keep making it. Keep posting it. Keep pushing it out there because people will show up. If you build it, it'll come.
1,000%. My favorite quote right now, it may change, but right now is today is the youngest that you will ever be.
Mm-hmm.
Go do the thing.
Yeah, legit. Mine, the mantra that I have is do for yourself today what you want for yourself tomorrow. That's it. You just got to keep pushing it out there.
All right, man. So I wouldn't have done my job if I didn't do a little bit of digging. I found a photo, I believe it was in your notes app on your phone, where you had listed out a handful of different milestones and goals that you wanted to hit. It looks like at this point, you started to check off a couple of the big ones. What's next for you? What's coming in 2025?
Ooh, next. I want to sell a TV show. I want to shoot a special. I want to shoot an hour-long special. I have a movie idea that I'm outlining now, so I want to write that script. And I want to continue to, like I said before, build up the YouTube. I want to get the YouTube to like a good amount where it starts benefiting me for ticket sales and, touring consistently. There's a lot of goals that I have. It's a lot of goals, along with, hopefully and all that, keeping my mental health and physical health in check, but yeah, I think a lot of these things that I have, they're all very attainable. It's just a matter of making sure that I wake up and check in and do it. It is so easy to say, I'm about to do this, you know, but forcing yourself to do it and realizing that you're passionate about it, because you have to like really keep your passion in check. You know, even the things that you love, as much as I love stand-up comedy, there are definitely times where I'm just like, damn, I have to go tell these jokes tonight. But then I'll reframe my mind and say, I get to go tell these jokes tonight. I get to go perform. You have to sometimes trick yourself into the excitement for these things that you have, because, you know, work is work. It's all work. And there are days where you don't feel like showing up, man. We're all human. We all need breaks, especially in this economy. Everybody's like, oh, it's the grind mentality all the time. And it wears you down. It's a grind. It grinds you down. But yeah, those are the types of goals that I want to achieve. Shoot a special, sell this TV show, write this script for this movie, and continue to tour.
All right, man. Tell the people, where can they connect with you? Where can they find you?
Jourdain Fisher on everything. So for Instagram, Jourdain Fisher. Follow me on Instagram, J Fisher Comedy on TikTok. Just type in Jourdain Fisher on YouTube. You'll find me. We also have a podcast with a friend of mine named Antonio Kareem, who's also a great stand-up. It's called Brand New Homies. So yeah, just look for me there and come see a show. You know, just check the links in my bios and all that kind of stuff. Buy some tickets, come out, have some fun.
All right, Jourdain. Thank you so much for being on the show, man. Really, really appreciate it. I had a blast. I hope you did as well. For anybody that's still listening, thank you. The only way that we can have conversations with people like Jourdain is if you continue to tune in week after week, like, subscribe, and follow along. But for now, my name is Chris Ford. This is Differentiated. We'll see you next time.
Appreciate it.